My name is Eric Fetchbod. I'll tell you about my compression theory. I call it the Entropy Navigation theory. And I came up with it when I was using a language model, and I just spent all night trying to understand the nature of reality. I was really trying to understand my own problems. And I ended up in order to understand my own problems, my own shortcomings, my own misunderstandings about life, I came up with a compression theory, and I call it, it's basically pressure, compression, projection, selection, then the recursive loop. I call it the Entropy Navigation system. Now, how did I come up with this? So I said, what is the main function of our intelligence? So I looked into it and I realized that the main function of our intelligence is to keep us alive. So the number one survival principle of anything that's alive, whether it's a bacteria, whether it's a human being, an animal, a plant, a microorganism, is ultimately to survive. Even bacteria, these are basically chemical, biological pathogens that basically either grow, feed, and basically their main function is to live. And so I thought about it. A living thing's main function is either to grow. So once it's alive, it wants to grow, and it wants to continue to be alive, right? So what is the number one function of pretty much any living thing? To survive, to not die. So, okay, if that's its main function, and you think about human beings in our conscious mind, the main function of our mind is to help us stay alive. And of course, we want to grow and expand, but ultimately the number one function is to not die. So if a bullet come your way, you try to move. If fire burn you, you pull back. You eat food because you don't want to cease to exist. And so I said, okay, if the main function of our minds is to survive, right? Then the question becomes, if the main function of us is to survive, the question becomes, how does that play out based on the evolutionary theory? And I end up isolating 3 or 4 main functions. And these functions are supported by information theory and evolutionary psychology and cybernetics and all these different type of things. It fits into that, right? And so pressure, right? So before I get into that, I'm going to explain what entropy navigation means. So first, you must understand how survival sits inside of our larger paradigm of physics, or in the universe, or what we explain as the universe. So first, you need to know what entropy is. Entropy is basically the tendency for things to dissipate, to create disorder, randomness, to go from a state of low entropy, like my hand. This is low entropy. That means that the chemical reactions that's happening in the physical matter is in a stable state where I have a hand. If my body or my hand were to eventually drift apart and turn into dust and clouds and other things, that's a state of high entropy. Well, the whole universe is constantly expanding and becoming more and more entropy. Now, let me explain it in a simple way, and I'm going to bring it back to the entropy navigation model. So the current accepted paradigm of the universe right now, the most accepted one, is the Big Bang theory. And the Big Bang is, there was a singularity. There was a single point. At that single point, an explosion happened. And because the Big Bang explosion happened, all matter in the universe was created during the Big Bang. It was used to be a singularity. We don't know what the singularity is. We don't know if it was physical material. We don't know if it was a chemical reaction. We don't know if it was a mini universe being created when they're ripping space-time. We don't know, but we know there was a single point. Our logical minds deduce it back to a single point. And then our evaluation over the last 100, 200, 300 years of physics start to understand that the universe is expanding. So if you reverse that expansion of the universe, it will reverse back into a single point. So the Big Bang is the explosion that created all the matter in the universe. And because the explosion pushes out like that, that means that all the matter is slowly spreading out. Okay. And so that's what we call entropy. Because it's spreading out, it went from a singularity, order, or a state of low entropy, to spreading out to a state of high entropy. So entropy in physics technically mean heat death. And as the chemical reactions in gases are crumbling to each other as it expands out, right? The farther it's spread out, the less gas is going to interact and less heat is going to be created and more entropy is created, into the point where there's no piece of microscopic matter or quantum matter next to each other, because they're expanding out into the vacuum of space, which is so large that eventually no chemical reactions will happen, no heat will be created, no matter in low entropy states will be possible, because everything is so spread out far against each other that the matter that allows for chemical reactions, that allow for physical matter to be created through their interactions, will be so spread out where basically the universe will die out. All life as we know it will die out. All chemical reactions as we know it will die out. Heat death will happen because no chemical reactions will be happening to create the heat, and boom, we're all dead. Okay? Now let's zoom back in. Singularity. As the universe, remember, their universe is so large, it's infinite in our mind. So as it expands out, there's gas clouds and matter clamming into each other, and that's how the earth was created, right? So that's entropy. Now, let's zoom back into Earth. My physical body exists inside of the Earth, inside of the universe, right? Inside of, the vacuum of space. Our physical body has a low entropy state. That means chemical reactions and matter are reacting and creating repels and attractions that allow my body to be held together. Okay? But if you think about it, in the greater universe, even though my body's held together, the greater universe is still expanding. So slowly, microscopically, over millions of years, billions of years, technically, even the physical state of my face will eventually be pulled apart by the entropy that's pulling against. So what a chemical reaction does is when these different, let's call it quantum particulates of whatever the Big Bang had, are interacting and creating electron charges and having chemical reactions and all that stuff, right? That's what keeps us alive. That's why we're a physical being, whether it's a plant or animal. These are chemical reactions and material attractions that keep the physical state of these things, including me. So technically, over an old enough time, we will die out anyways, because as entropy keeps expanding and randomness keeps stretching out, even our own bodies will be pulled apart over time, and we wouldn't be able to exist in this low entropy state. And so in many ways, as the universe expands, we're programmed to die over long periods of time. So even if I was able to exist for 500 billion years, as the universe continued to create more entropy and spread out, those chemical reactions of the low entropy state will eventually pull me apart. Okay? So the reason I named it entropy navigation is, what I'm saying is entropy, heat death, we're all dying as the universe expands out into the abyss. And so entropy navigation is saying, how do I stay alive? And I convert staying alive with, how do I stay in a low entropy state? That's what we call in evolutionary psychology, biology, and this is how I see it. This is my own theory. That's what I call survival, the survival impetus. So human beings want to survive. And our cognition, our brain, our conscious mind, in my opinion, is the number one way in which we survive. Now, let's get into the entropy navigation superstructure. So the entropy navigation superstructure, in which I'm trying to come up with, is basically a framework. It's not science. It's not proven. It's just a framework using known principles that have been established in science to explain the nature of our cognition, the nature of our mind. Why does our mind exist, and how do our mind works in such a way that you'll be able to intervene and fix problems in your mind. And that's how I even came up with this. I came up with this because I was having so many problems, personal challenges in my life, and so many ups and downs and addictions and crazy stuff, to the point where I wanted to die, that I start using these language models to pump my entire life in there, reverse engineer it, connect it to how the physics work, how biology works, how cognition works, to break down how my thinking created these repetitive addictive patterns that allow me to keep doing the same thing over and over, because I didn't understand the nature of my mind. And I ended up coming up with a framework called entropy navigation. So here's how it works. If you take a bacterium, right, that's something that we don't consider alive. The way a bacteria basically stays alive, it doesn't have a brain. It just either moves away from danger or it moves toward food or nutrients. So basically, if you think about the function of a bacterium, in order to survive, it eats or it moves toward nutrients. It's called a chemical gradient. So if it's near something that's considered a nutrient, it will move toward it like that, right? That's a form of survival on it, even on a biology. Move away from danger, things that kill you, and move toward things that feed you and nourish you. That's a form of survival. So early on, bacterium, this is my projection, would move toward chemical gradients. And as it moved more toward so let's say it's in a new environment, like in the Jurassic age, this bacteria moves toward nutrients, move away from things that can like kill it or neutralize it. And so that's a early form of like mechanical memory and survival, right? It moves toward nutrients, move away from danger. But as it started to evolve and basically reproduce, it learns more and more of the environment as the bacteria moves through the environment, right? So it moves through different environments on Earth. It reproduces. The next generation learns to move away from more things that are dangerous, move toward more things. And over time, it's moving all over the environment where its memory cells start to grow, right? So it knows about a larger terrain in which the bacteria can move from, and it knows about 1,000 things that can hurt it and 1,500 things that are good for him. So it's getting smarter and smarter and smarter. That building up of over every generation of bacterium getting recreated start to expand its memory. Now we're starting to get into like a human thing, right? So it has a database of the environment and say all of this is good and all of this is bad. And so it's growing over billions of years. And I think that's what human beings are. So what happens is, I think that the bacteria got to a point where it had so many generations reborn, and it started to learn more and more about the environment, where it got so large where in order for the bacteria to officially move toward chemical gradients that are nutrients and move away from danger, that it started to get so large it needed the algorithm. It needed to compress the environment in order to still be in its entropy form, bacterium, but still have the ability to have like more and more information. So the bacterium start creating something called compression. And what compression is, instead of just storing every single nutrient that's good for you and storing data on everything that's bad for you, it starts to compress or optimize its ability to do that. And so what it would do is, instead of recording all of the type of things that are nutrients and all of the things that are bad, it starts to notice patterns. So instead of storing raw data, it stores a pattern of the environment, right? And because it stores a pattern of the environment, it becomes more efficient and starts to optimize for basically survival. So that way it can store more of the environment by, instead of storing raw data, it stores a representation of the environment called a compression. So here's the thing. Any living thing, because its main function is survive, if any danger comes near it, I call that pressure. The pressure, it puts it in a situation where it has to make a decision. It has to move. And so pressure comes into an environment, and the pressure pushes against the bacterium, and the bacteria has to move, and it moves toward a chemical gradient. So that's the first concept in my entropy navigation system, that first there must be pressure in order for human beings to actually do anything. And so our number one pressure is to survive and not die. So if pressure comes toward a human being, they're forced to react. They react. And as more pressure comes, they react again. And then as they have to learn and remember more and more things, they can't just remember everything. So your mind starts to compress things into patterns. That's called compression. So pressure, compression. Once your mind has enough patterns in your mind, it doesn't need to remember the environment no more. It doesn't need to remember everything in the environment. I call that lossy memory, because it has a pattern map of the environment. And so if something comes around that's similar, it knows how to act, even if it hasn't been around all of the environment. So pressure comes in, maybe it's danger, maybe it's hunger, whatever. You have a map that now got so large that you start to compress it into patterns. And now the next level that puts us in the level of human beings is called projection, right? So not only if there's pressure that comes in the environment, I have all of my patterns of mapping the environment compressed in a form of patterns in my mind, but now I can anticipate danger with something called projection. I can go into my memory and look at all the patterns I remember, and I can imagine if a threat comes left, I go right. I can imagine, it's called projection. You're projecting what you learned in your head, the patterns, your memories about what you want to do. Projection. So projection. So you project all future scenarios. And then you do the next thing in my entropy navigation model is called selection. When you project potential futures, you pick the one you think maximizes survival. That's called selection, right? Okay, pressure. So remember, pressure, compression, projection, selection. So that's how human beings make decisions. Some pressures on them. Hey, I'm hungry. That's the pressure that's hitting your body, right? Compression. You think about all the different things you ate before, right? All the different patterns and feelings of things that you ate before. You imagine yourself, maybe some chicken sounds good. Maybe some beef. You project what you potentially want to eat. Then you select, okay, I'm going to select beef, right? In selection, you go do the action. So you select beef and you go make beef. So pressure, compression, selection. And then there's a recursive loop. Whatever you select, right? You eat beef, you remember how that beef tastes, that goes into your memory. So the next time you do something, that memory of how that beef taste is compressed in your mind. So the next time you do a projection and selection, that will include that, and then recursively do it over and over and over. Now, that's just the beginning of the concept. It has wide-reaching implications because it explains cognition. Now, how does it explain cognition? It explains cognition because your sense of yourself is a recursive loop that reflects back on itself. What does that mean? That means that everything that you compress in your mind over your entire life of living, your mind remembers how it felt, where you were at, what you didn't like, but you can't remember all of it because remember I told you last time with the bacterial ideal that eventually you map the environment so much where your mind, because you have a physical body that's not that large, can't afford to remember everything you did. So you just compress it into patterns, and that's what your memory is. That's why when you remember things, you only can remember parts of it that's important, but the rest of it is what's called lossy. That means unclear, because the human mind don't actually remember everything. It only remembers what's important because it's trying to be efficient. And so that's why when you think back on a childhood memory, you can't remember like how you looked. You can't remember when you close your eyes exactly where you were at because your mind can't afford to store all that unnecessary data. So it only remembers the most important stuff. Man, I felt it was a fun time. I remember that one time I jumped off that trampoline. You can't see the trampoline in your mind, but you remembered it. It hard-coded that stuff. So next time when you think about your childhood and you think about, I want to go get a car because I'm having a midlife crisis, that compressed memory of your childhood is going to be a part of your imagination about what it'll be like to get a sports car in mid-age. And that goes part of your projection. So that compression of how you felt about your childhood affects how you imagine about potential futures. When you think about, man, what should I do with my life? Man, my childhood was horrible my whole life. Now that I'm 45 or 40, maybe I should get a sports car because my childhood was always bad. At least I can make sure I live it up on now that I'm getting older. You see how that compression affected your projection? Okay, I should get a sports car. You know what? I'm going to do it. Selection. You actually go get the sports car. And so that decision to get the sports car goes back into your memory compressed. And the next time you make a decision, now that experience of getting the sports car and all that stuff gets affected on your next projection. And so that's what I call the entropy navigation system. And that whole system is based around you surviving, right? And so once you understand that, you understand one key thing. Most of your psychological problems, most of your emotional problems are based on what I call distortions. Something happened, a trauma, a bad feeling got compressed into your mind. And every time you try to think about your life or a decision you want to make, that feeling of how you felt gets projected in all your future plans. Man, I can't do that because I'm a weak person. Man, I can't do that because my whole life I've been broke. So I'm probably not going to end up rich. All of your experiences the patterns of your experiences that been compressed into your mind. When I use the word compressed, that means it's part of your memory. Every time you try to imagine a future, understand that everything you experience and everything you compressed into your mind affects what you think about the future. And so the only way to get over things like a drama, addiction, maybe you had some sexual trauma, maybe you had some emotional trauma, in order to convince your mind and really think about a future where you are not going to be that person anymore, you have to actually fix your selection layer. You have to go create new experiences that feed back into your compression layer. That's your memory in your mind. So the next time you think about going to talk to that girl, you'll say, you know what? My whole life I didn't get girls, but the next time, the best way to affect my ability to get girls in the future, I have to go talk to girls. Even if it feels uncomfortable, I have to do it, because if it goes well one time, your mind remembers that and it compresses. So the next time you think about talking to a girl, you say, you know what? Most of my life I didn't get girls, but that one time it worked. Let me try again. And if it works a second time, that goes back into your memory in your mind and get compressed again. So the next time you say, I'm going to talk to a girl, you say, you know what? 2 times in a row, I want to talk to a girl and it went well. And so that get compressed into your memory. And then when you think about talking to a girl, the next time you see a girl there, I'm going to go do it. Your mind says, well, 2 times you did it, it worked. You go do a 3rd time. And if you do it enough times, your mind's compression now goes from your childhood where you didn't get girls to now, hey, for the last year, I've been getting girls. So next time you see a girl you like, your compression from physical experience get compressed into your mind, into your memory that, hey, it's been going well an entire year, and you're going to go up to that girl more confident. So what I'm trying to say is basically that the most important layer to changing your behavior is always what you physically do, because there's distortions. Whatever get compressed in your mind, like if you were very poor when you were a kid and they made fun of you, that gets compressed deep into your mind that, hey, I'm kind of a weirdo, right? And so every time you think about a potential future, hey, I want to become a rock star. Hey, I want to make a YouTube channel. All of that, I think I'm a weirdo, is in your compression layer. And when you think about the future before you do it, you think, oh, maybe I'm not going to do that because I'm going to get embarrassed because I've been a weirdo my whole life. Maybe I should make, and then you never make the YouTube channel. It's affecting even what you think about the future. And so you need to understand that all of that shit that happens to you distorts your decisions. So a lot of times you spend your whole life avoiding stuff because you've already had ideals compressed in your mind from childhood about who you are, about what you're not. And so you don't realize that it's not just the past, because it's affecting your future decisions. And so I call those distortions because it's distorting reality. You have these compressed ideals from your entire childhood in your memory, deep down in your subconscious. You don't know that they exist. And anytime you're trying to think about planning for the future, it's affecting how you think about stuff, what you believe you can do. And so you need to understand how cognition work to be able to intervene. And if you think about it, the way you change who you are is change what you compress. Right? So that means that you have to curate your experiences. You have to make it deliberate. Hey, I need to go talk to girls. Hey, I need to go do this. Hey, I need to go work out every day. Because over a year of you working out every day, you're compressing in your mind, I'm the type of guy who works out. And that's going to affect your next decision and your next belief about yourself. This mind of yours actually has a system, and I call that system the Entropy Navigation system. Pressure, compression, projection, selection, then recursive loop. That means that whatever you end up selecting goes back and get compressed in your mind, and then your next projection selection is included in that thing you did last time. Enjoy.